On a vibrant Saturday, Mateus, Isabella, and little Tiago crossed the gates of the Central Park. The event, widely advertised as the festival of the year, attracted a diverse crowd pulsing with contagious energy. Colorful flags swayed to the rhythm of the music that spread like a warm wave through the avenues and streets intersecting the park. "Look, Tiago! There will be magicians and jugglers too!" exclaimed Isabella, pointing to a group of artists warming up near one of the entrances. The boy, his eyes sparkling with excitement, could barely keep still. Mateus, with a calm smile, watched his family soak in the festive atmosphere. "How about we start with some treats? Popcorn, maybe," he suggested, guiding them toward a nearby vendor. As Mateus negotiated for a large bag of caramelized popcorn, Tiago became distracted. His eyes locked on a flock of colorful pigeons, their feathers shimmering in the sun in shades of blue and green, scrapping over crumbs near an ornate fountain. "Look, Mom, look at the pigeons!" Tiago gently tugged on Isabella's sleeve, pointing excitedly. Isabella smiled, waving him to get a little closer. "Go ahead, but don't go too far. Stay where I can see you, okay?" Tiago nodded vigorously and trotted towards the birds, his attention completely captured by their coming and going. Isabella turned to Mateus, who was returning with a bag of popcorn in his hands. "He's so excited. I can't remember the last time I saw him like this," commented Isabella, her eyes following Tiago, who was now at a considerable distance, laughing as he tried to keep up with the erratic flight of the pigeons. Mateus followed his wife's gaze and smiled. This festival was a great idea. A perfect day for our family. "Yes, perfect," agreed Isabella, though a twinge of worry began to grow silently in her heart. She knew all too well Tiago's boundless curiosity. The music picked up, a local band began a lively number, and more people crowded around the improvised stage. The scent of barbecue, cotton candy, and other delicacies filled the air, drawing visitors to the various food stalls. Mateus handed a cup of soda to Isabella and grabbed a few handfuls of popcorn, joyfully observing the environment. "Let's join him after we eat a bit. Maybe we'll try some games, how about that?" Isabella nodded, but her attention was fixed on Tiago, who was now running back and forth, completely oblivious to the growing crowd around him. Suddenly, she lost sight of his blonde hair among the mass of people. "Tiago!" she called out, her voice tinged with anxiety as she stood up, looking around. "Tiago!" Mateus noticed the change in her tone, and his face hardened with concern. "What's wrong?" he asked, setting the popcorn bag aside and standing up as well. He was right there, with the pigeons, and now... Isabella gestured, her voice raised by rising panic. "I can't see him anymore, Mateus. He's gone." The two began to push through the crowd, calling for Tiago, their hearts pounding with growing fear as each call returned without an answer. The festival, once a scene of celebration and joy, had now become a labyrinth of uncertainties and fears, where each second seemed to stretch infinitely as they searched for their son. As the pulsating music of the festival became a distant backdrop for Isabella, her heart raced in a frenetic rhythm. The sudden absence of Tiago, as if he had been swallowed by the festive crowd, catalyzed a panic she had never experienced before. "Tiago!" Isabella shouted, her voice rising above the cacophony of festival sounds. She scanned the crowd desperately, hoping to catch a glimpse of her son's familiar blonde hair. Mateus, by her side, tried to maintain a calm he did not feel. "Let's split up," he suggested, trying to overlay rationality over the growing fear. "You go left, I'll go right. He can't have gone far." Isabella nodded, though every cell in her body resisted the idea of separating from Mateus at that chaotic moment. "All right," she agreed with a trembling voice. "But let's meet back here in 10 minutes, no matter what." "Yes, 10 minutes," Mateus confirmed. They exchanged a look laden with mutual dread before launching in opposite directions, each step driven by the urgency to find Tiago. Isabella began calling for her son, her voice growing hoarse. "Tiago, please son, where are you?" She bumped into people, quickly apologizing and moving forward, her eyes scouring each child's face in the hope it was Tiago. Meanwhile, Mateus, moving in the opposite direction, tried to keep his focus despite the fear clouding his mind. He stopped at every step to ask vendors and festival goers if they had seen a blond boy wearing a blue t-shirt and khaki shorts. "Has anyone seen a boy around here?" His voice grew desperate. A lady with an ice cream cart shook her head, a look of sympathy on her face. "I'm sorry, sir. Many children have passed by here. Maybe try the first aid station." Clutching at the suggestion, Mateus nodded gratefully and quickened his pace, heading toward the mentioned first aid station, while continuing to call for his son. Back to Isabella, she approached a clown who was making balloons for the children. With tears threatening to spill, she asked, "Please, have you seen a little boy, alone, maybe chasing pigeons?" The clown paused his activities and thought for a moment. "Ah, yes, I saw a boy chasing a flock of pigeons earlier. He went that way." He pointed towards an area near the ornate bridge that spanned the park. Renewed with a thread of hope, Isabella murmured a hasty thanks and ran in the indicated direction, her heart beating in sync with her hurried steps. As the 10 minutes neared their end, Isabella and Mateus, following scattered clues, converged back at the meeting point, both without having found Tiago, but not ready to give up. Isabella's breathing was labored as she approached the quieter, shaded area near the ornate bridge. Her heart pounded fiercely, hope and fear intertwined with every step she took. The music and laughter of the festival now seemed distant, muffled by the sound of her own worries. Finally, she spotted Tiago. He was squatting down, completely absorbed in a game with a little girl Isabella had never seen before. The girl had a gentle face with big, expressive eyes, but her clothes were visibly worn and faded from use. "Tiago!" Isabella called out, her voice trembling with a mix of relief and reprimand. Tiago quickly looked up, his eyes lighting up at the sight of his mother. "Mommy!" he exclaimed, running to her and throwing himself into her arms. "I was showing my cars to Sophia." Isabella hugged him tightly, feeling a mix of relief and worry. "Oh, Tiago, you scared me so much. You shouldn't wander off like that." "I was so worried," she said, trying to control the tears that threatened to fall. Turning to the little girl who watched them with a mix of curiosity and caution, Isabella knelt down to be at eye level with the child. "Hello, dear, I'm Isabella, Tiago's mom. What's your name?" "Sophia," the girl replied in a soft voice. "We were playing store. I'm the shopkeeper and Tiago is the customer." "Sophia, where are your parents?" Isabella asked, noticing the absence of any adult supervising the girl. Sophia pointed to an area under the bridge, where old blankets and some cardboard boxes formed a modest, makeshift space. "My mom is there. We live there," Sophia said, with a simplicity that tugged at Isabella's heart. "You live here, under the bridge?" Isabella repeated, her voice full of concern as she glanced at the improvised shelter. "Yes, my mom plays guitar up there, near the food stalls, to earn some money," explained Sophia, accepting the situation with a maturity that seemed heavy for a child her age. Isabella felt a pang in her heart. "Can we go see your mom now?" she asked gently, extending her hand to Sophia. Sophia nodded and took Isabella's hand. Together, the three walked toward the makeshift shelter under the bridge. As they approached, a dark-haired woman with a face marked by the sun looked up at them. Her tired eyes brightened upon seeing Sophia next to strangers. "Hello," Isabella began, hesitant. "I'm Isabella, Tiago's mom. Sophia was playing with my son, and she brought us here." Clara, Sophia's mother, stood up, wiping her hands on her faded skirt. "Thank you for bringing Sophia back, ma'am. I try to keep an eye on her, But sometimes I have to play to earn something to eat, she explained with a voice that carried both pride and apology. As Isabella listened to Clara talk about their struggles and life under the bridge, a wave of compassion washed over her. She looked at Tiago and then at Sofia, thinking about the comfort and security her own son had and that Sofia clearly lacked. Isabella, accompanied by Tiago and Sofia, cautiously approached the area where Clara was sitting, her hands still lightly vibrating from the last notes played on her worn guitar. The music had stopped, and the ensuing silence seemed to carry a palpable seriousness. "Hello, Clara, right?" Isabella began, trying to soften her voice as much as possible. "I'm Isabella, and this is my son, Tiago." Sofia was playing with him at the festival. Clara smiled gently at them, her face lighting up at the mention of Sofia. "Yes, I'm Clara. It's a pleasure to meet you." "Sofia talks a lot about the festival. She loves to see the people and hear the music," said Clara, her eyes following Sofia, who now held Tiago's hand, clearly relieved to be back by her mother's side. Isabella sat down next to Clara on a flat stone, while Mateus stood by, watching the interaction with a thoughtful expression. "We saw you playing the guitar earlier. You are very talented," commented Isabella, wanting to establish a connection before addressing deeper matters. "Thank you," Clara responded, a trace of pride mixed with sadness in her voice. "I've been playing since I was young. It was a way to support my daughter and me after things changed for us." Isabella leaned slightly forward, encouraged by Clara's openness. "If you don't mind me asking, how did you end up here, under this bridge?" Clara sighed, a shadow crossing her face. "It's a long story. We had a normal life, a home. But after my husband passed away, the debts started piling up. I couldn't keep a job and take care of Sofia at the same time. Eventually, we lost our home and had no choice but to come here. We've tried to make this place a home in every way possible," she explained, delicate gestures accompanying each word, revealing a woman who had faced more storms than many could endure. "I'm so sorry for all you've been through," Isabella said sincerely, feeling a pang of pain for Clara and Sofia. "Isn't there something we can do to help?" Mateus, who had been a silent observer until then, intervened. "Perhaps there is something, Isabella." He crouched down to be at eye level with Clara. "We have a summer house not far from here, by a lake. It's quiet and would be a safe place for you and Sofia to stay for a while, until things get better." Clara looked at them, clearly touched but hesitant. "I don't know what to say. It's a generous offer, but I don't want to impose." "It's no imposition at all," Mateus assured her with a warm smile. "We see this as an opportunity to help. We would be happy to have you." Isabella nodded, placing a hand on Clara's. "Think of it as a new beginning. A place for Sofia to play and grow up safely." Clara looked at Sofia, who was busy showing Tiago how to make a crown of wildflowers. Tears shimmered in her eyes as she finally nodded. "Yes, let's try." For Sofia. In the tranquility of their kitchen, away from the bustle of the festival, Isabella and Mateus sat at the table with 2 steaming cups of tea between them. The comfortable silence was broken by Isabella, who began to share her thoughts, clearly concerned about the well-being of Clara and Sofia. "Mateus, I can't stop thinking about Clara and Sofia living that way, under the bridge. It's heartbreaking," Isabella started, wringing her hands in her lap, her gaze fixed on the cup in front of her. Mateus sighed, running his hand through his hair. "I know, dear. It's a terrible situation. But what do you suggest we do?" "I was thinking, maybe we could offer them our summer house. Just until they can stabilize. It's safe, secluded, and I think it would make a big difference for them," proposed Isabella, her eyes meeting Mateus's, seeking support. Mateus hesitated, frowning as he considered the implications. "It's a big decision, Isabella. What about the grandfather? Would he come too?" Yes, of course. He's part of their family, and from what Clara told me, he's been facing his own challenges, especially since he lost his sight. They need a stable environment, Isabella argued passionately, her heart heavy with the need to help. Mateus took a sip of his tea, pondering deeply. And if they need more than just a place to stay, are we prepared to help with other needs that may arise? Isabella nodded with understanding. We can start by offering the house. And maybe we can help Clara find a job, something she can do to support her family without being on the streets. I'm worried about what this entails, Isabella. But seeing you so moved, how can I say no? Let's do this. Let's offer our house to them as a temporary refuge, Mateus finally agreed, still somewhat reluctant. He knew his wife's generosity well and understood that helping others was part of who she was. Isabella smiled, relieved and grateful for Mateus's support. Thank you, love. I think this could really help them get their lives back. Let's talk to them tomorrow, Mateus said, already committing to the idea. Let's invite them to come here, show them the house, and discuss how we can proceed. Yes, that sounds perfect. Tomorrow will be a new day for all of us, Isabella replied, feeling a mix of nervousness and hope. With the decision made, the couple spent the rest of the evening discussing details and planning how they would present the offer to Clara and her family. Both knew they were about to embark on a journey that could change not only the lives of Clara, Sophia, and the grandfather but also their own. The following morning, Mateus and Isabella greeted Clara, Sophia, and the grandfather at the door of their home. The sunlight softly reflected off the nearby lake, creating an almost magical atmosphere. "Welcome," said Isabella with a warm smile. "We are so glad you accepted our offer. Let us show you around the house." Clara, holding Sophia's hand, was visibly moved. "We can't thank you enough. This kindness, it's more than we could have hoped for," she said, her voice choked with gratitude. "Think nothing of it," replied Mateus, leading them inside. "We want you to feel at home here." The summer house was spacious and inviting, with large windows that offered stunning views of the lake and surrounding woods. As they walked through the living room, Isabella pointed out the various amenities. "Here is the living room," she began. "And there is the kitchen. We hope you like to cook because the view from the window is truly inspiring in the morning." Sophia ran to the window, looking out with awe. "Mommy, look at the ducks on the lake," she exclaimed, pointing excitedly. Clara smiled, following her daughter to the window, then turned to Isabella. "This is paradise compared to what we were used to. Sophia has never had a safe place to play like this." Sophia's grandfather, a man of dignified stature even with his recent blindness, remained a bit more reserved, listening to the sounds of nature and the gentle lapping of water on the shore. "It's peaceful here," he observed. "A good place to think and rest." Mateus, noticing the grandfather's hesitation to explore due to his condition, offered his arm. "Let me show you the way to the deck. There's a nice breeze out there, and the sound of the water is very soothing." Grateful, the grandfather accepted the help, and together they walked outside, where he could feel the environment more directly. Meanwhile, Isabella continued the tour of the house, showing the bedroom that Clara and Sophia would share. "We set everything up thinking of you. We hope it's comfortable." "It's more than comfortable, it's a dream," Clara responded, looking around the room decorated with simplicity and good taste. "How can we ever thank you? Seeing you safe and happy is thanks enough for us," Isabella said sincerely. The afternoon progressed as they unpacked and arranged their belongings in their rightful places. The move, though physical, symbolized much more. It was the beginning of a new phase, filled with hope and possibilities, yet also marked by a subtle sense of fear of the unknown and the future. In the days following their move to the summer house, Sophia's grandfather began to spend long periods walking by the lake, guided by Sophia or Mateus, or even alone, developing a sense of the space through sound and smell. The surrounding nature became a tapestry woven of sounds: the chirping of birds, the murmur of the gentle lake waves, and the whisper of leaves. On a particularly serene morning, while dew still covered the lawn, the grandfather found himself alone by the lake's edge. With his hands outstretched, he touched the trunks and fallen branches, each texture telling a story. It was then that his fingers encountered pieces of wood that had been sculpted by water and time. Curious and driven by an ancient impulse, he began to collect the most interesting pieces. Carrying them back to the small shed that Mateus had shown to be a storage and workspace, he found old tools that had been left there: carving knives, sandpaper, and chisels. "What have you found, Grandpa?" Sophia asked later that day, finding him sitting in the shed with pieces of wood spread around. "These are pieces of wood, my dear. I used to make small sculptures a long time ago," he explained, his fingers gently caressing the surface of a particularly smooth piece. "Can you show me how to do it?" Sophia asked, her eyes sparkling with interest. "Of course," the grandfather smiled, feeling a wave of joy. With patience, he began to show Sophia how to hold the carving knife, how to find the grain of the wood, and how to apply gentle pressure. Day after day, while Sophia was at school or playing near the lake, the grandfather worked on the wood. He created simple forms initially: birds, fish, and leaves, each reflecting elements of the nature that he felt around him, even though he could not see them. Isabella and Mateus, observing his renewed enthusiasm, provided him with more tools and better quality pieces of wood. Isabella, in particular, was fascinated to see how the grandfather's hands skillfully danced over the wood, transforming rough pieces into art. "You have a real talent, sir," Isabella commented one day, watching the grandfather finish a small statue of a fish that seemed about to leap. "I had forgotten the pleasure it brings me," the grandfather admitted. "Each piece helps me remember my wife, our life together, and yes, even the losses we have faced." As the weeks passed, the small sculptures began to populate the living room shelf, each one a testament to the grandfather's memories and skill. And as he rediscovered his passion and ability, the rest of the family began to see these artworks as symbols of their journey and resilience. After a rejuvenating weekend at a quiet retreat in the mountains, Mateus and Isabella returned to the summer house, both re-energized and eager to see the family they had hosted. Upon entering the living room, they both stopped abruptly, surprised and delighted by the sight that greeted them. The shelf that had previously held only books and small ornaments now displayed an impressive collection of wooden sculptures. Each piece, from small animals to delicate human figures, seemed to pulse with life and emotion. "Wow, this is incredible!" Mateus exclaimed, stepping closer to examine the sculptures. "Who made these?" he asked, already suspecting the answer. "Sophia's grandfather started working with the wood he found by the lake," Isabella responded, her tone mixing surprise and admiration. "It seems he's rediscovered an old talent." They were interrupted by the arrival of Clara, who smiled upon seeing their reaction. "He has been spending hours in the shed," she explained. "It's wonderful to see how much he has been enjoying it." "These pieces are extraordinary," Mateus said, still inspecting the sculptures. "There's a story behind each one, isn't there?" Clara nodded. "Yes, each one represents something from his life, memories of my mother, his wife, and moments they shared. He says that carving helps him remember and feel her presence again." Isabella, deeply moved by the emotional depth of the works, had an idea. "Clara, have you thought about showing these works in town? There's an art gallery downtown that hosts exhibitions of local artists. I think people would be delighted to see this work." Clara seemed to hesitate for a moment, looking at the sculptures with a mix of pride and nervousness. "Do you think so? I'm not sure if he would be ready for something like that." Mateus intervened, placing a hand on Clara's shoulder encouragingly. "Clara, Art is a way of sharing stories and emotions. It can be very rewarding to see how someone's creations touch others. Maybe we can just talk to him, see what he thinks about it. Agreeing, Clara called Sophia's grandfather, who joined them with a cautious walk. Explaining Mateus and Isabella's reaction to his sculptures and Isabella's suggestion, they carefully observed his reaction. Sophia's grandfather listened attentively, his fingers gently brushing over one of the sculptures as he thought. Finally, he smiled, a gleam of pride and a trace of emotion in his voice. "It would be an honor to share some of my life and memories with others. And perhaps my dear wife, wherever she may be, would feel proud too." Excited by his consent and the prospect of sharing his talent with the world, everyone began to plan the next step, the exhibition. This renewed sense of purpose and enthusiasm paves the way for the next chapter, where the preparation for the exhibition and the impact of the wooden sculptures on the local audience begin to take shape, promising not just a new chapter for Sophia's grandfather, but for the entire family. The afternoon following the consensus on the exhibition, while the house was still immersed in preparations, Ricardo, a renowned art collector from the region, was invited to visit the makeshift outdoor studio. Mateus had heard of Ricardo's interest in local artists and, after a few phone calls, managed to schedule a visit. Upon arrival, Ricardo was greeted by Mateus and Isabella in the garden, where the sculptures were displayed under the shade of the trees, their forms standing out against the intense green of the lawn. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Ricardo. Thank you for accepting our invitation," Mateus greeted, extending his hand. "The pleasure is mine," Ricardo responded, his curiosity already piqued by the first impressions of the works he saw from a distance. "I've heard a lot about these sculptures. I'm eager to see them up close." Isabella, with a smile, began to guide Ricardo through the garden. Each of these pieces was carved by Sophia's grandfather. He found a new passion for art after facing quite difficult times. Ricardo nodded, his attention captured by the sculptures as they approached. "There's a palpable authenticity in each piece, a reflection of life, I presume?" "Exactly," Isabella agreed. "He channels his memories and emotions through each sculpture. It's a form of therapy for him and a celebration of the life he shared with his wife." As they walked, Ricardo occasionally stopped to examine a piece more closely. A sculpture of a bird in mid-flight particularly caught his attention. "The dynamics of this piece are extraordinary," he observed, his fingers almost touching the delicately carved wings. "You can feel the movement, as if it's about to take flight." Sophia's grandfather, who had joined the group, smiled modestly upon hearing the praise. "That was one of the first ones I made here. It represents the freedom I felt in rediscovering my ability to create." Ricardo looked at the older man, genuine respect shining in his eyes. "Your work is more than art, it's a visual narrative of your journey. I would like to discuss the possibility of acquiring some pieces for my collection. I believe more people should have the chance to appreciate what you've created." Sophia's grandfather exchanged glances with Mateus and Isabella, seeking their approval. Mateus, seeing the potential to further assist Sophia's grandfather and promote his art, nodded. "That sounds like a wonderful opportunity." With a nod of agreement, Ricardo said, "I would be interested in offering a significant sum. The value of your work is evident, and I'd like to ensure it is appreciated by a broader audience." Encouraged by this reception and the support of his temporary family, the grandfather accepted Ricardo's offer, moved by the idea that his creations could touch the hearts of others as they had touched his. After the successful sale of the sculptures to the collector Ricardo, Clara felt buoyed by a wave of optimism and gratitude that she hadn't experienced in a long time. Seated at the kitchen table with a laptop open in front of her, she browsed house listings, each click loaded with hope and possibilities. "I'm seeing some interesting options here," Clara commented, her enthusiasm evident in her voice as she showed the images to Isabella, who had joined her with a cup of coffee. Isabella smiled, encouraging her. Any in particular that caught your eye? This one looks perfect, Clara pointed to the screen. A modest but charming house located in a quiet neighborhood. It has a small garden and even a space that could be transformed into an art studio for my dad. The art studio idea sounds wonderful, Isabella agreed, admiring the photo of the house. You should schedule a visit. Who knows, it might be the ideal place to start anew. Encouraged, Clara picked up the phone and scheduled a visit for the following day. The possibility of finally having a home again, a place where Sophia could grow up and where her father could continue his art in peace, filled her heart with joy. The next day, Clara, accompanied by Mateus, who offered to help assess the house's condition, walked through what could become their new home. The real estate agent greeted them with a smile and guided them through the property. As you can see, the structure is in good condition, the agent explained as he showed each room. And the neighborhood is great for families, very safe and with a good school just a few blocks away. Clara listened attentively, her eyes sparkling as she imagined Sophia playing in the garden or her father sitting in the sun, carving his pieces. She turned to Mateus, seeking his opinion. What do you think, Mateus? I really like it, it seems to be what we need. Mateus examined the house with a critical eye, checking the windows, roof, and foundation. The house seems solid, he agreed. And the community here is really welcoming. I think it would be an excellent place for you all. With a light and hopeful heart, Clara decided to make an offer on the house. When the real estate agent left, she and Mateus returned to the summer house to share the good news with Isabella and Sophia's grandfather. If all goes well, we'll soon have our own home, Clara announced, almost not believing the words she was saying. Isabella hugged her, moved. We're so happy for you, Clara. You and your family deserve this. The excitement of planning the move and the possibility of a new life stretched out before Clara, promising a future filled with happiness and artistic creation. In the days following the offer on the house, while Clara anxiously awaited a response from the seller, her friendship with Ricardo began to deepen. They met frequently, sometimes to discuss details of the sculpture sale, other times simply to share a cup of coffee at the small neighborhood cafe. One sunny afternoon, as they watched the street activity outside the cafe, Ricardo began to talk more about his life, a subject he had kept relatively private until then. You know, Clara, art has been my salvation in many ways, Ricardo started, his gaze lost in some distant point. I lost my wife a few years ago. It was a long and painful battle with illness. During that time, art was what kept me sane. Clara listened attentively, her eyes filled with empathy. I had no idea, Ricardo. I'm so sorry for your loss, she said softly. Ricardo smiled sadly. Thank you, Clara. That's why I value your father's sculptures so much. They speak of loss and memory, something I can deeply relate to. It's amazing how art can connect us, isn't it? Clara reflected. It shows us that our experiences, as personal as they are universal in some ways. Exactly, agreed Ricardo. And that's why I want your father's work to be seen by more people, so they can also feel that connection, that comfort art provides. The dialogue between them flowed naturally, weaving a web of mutual understanding and respect. Ricardo, who usually maintained a more reserved demeanor, seemed genuinely at ease sharing his thoughts with Clara. Clara, hearing about your journey and seeing how you are rebuilding your life. It inspires me, Ricardo admitted, looking directly at her. It makes me believe that, despite everything, there is always a path forward. Clara felt a warmth in her heart. Ricardo's words echoed feelings she herself was beginning to recognize within her. I am truly grateful for this second chance, Ricardo, and for your friendship, she responded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. They parted that afternoon with a new level of understanding and friendship, both aware that they were in the midst of a journey of healing and growth, supported not only by art but also by the new friendship that was blossoming between them. Spring was in full bloom, bringing with it a rebirth that seemed to perfectly reflect Clara's current state in life. The lake, a silent witness to so many recent changes, shimmered under the afternoon sun, its waters a mirror to the cloudless blue sky. Clara and Ricardo walked slowly along its edge, each step accompanied by the soft crackling of dry leaves and small twigs under their feet. There was a tranquility between them, a peace that came not only from the setting but from each other's company. "Clara," Ricardo began, his soft voice breaking the comfortable silence, "this place has always brought me a sense of calm and reflection. And today, especially, it seems the perfect backdrop to share something important with you." Clara looked at him, feeling a mix of anticipation and nervousness. "What is it, Ricardo?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. Ricardo stopped, turning to face her fully, holding her hands in his. He looked into her eyes, and Clara saw in them a sparkle of genuine emotion. "Since we met, I felt a very special connection with you," Ricardo began, his voice trembling slightly with emotion. "You've brought new light into my life, Clara. A light I didn't realize was missing." Clara felt her heart beat faster, her own hand squeezing Ricardo's in response. I don't know what to say, Ricardo. I feel the same," she confessed, her words laden with sincerity. Ricardo smiled, relieved and encouraged by her response. He took a deep breath, gathering courage for the next words. "Clara, I don't want to just share occasional moments like this with you. I want to share my entire life," he said, and then, kneeling by the lake's edge, he pulled a small box from his pocket. Opening it, he revealed a delicate ring, its stone capturing the sunlight, shining with promises. "Clara, would you make me the happiest man in the world and marry me?" Ricardo asked, his gaze locked on hers, filled with hope and love. Tears sprang to Clara's eyes as she looked down at Ricardo, kneeling before her, and at the ring that symbolized a future together. With a voice choked by emotion, she replied, "Yes, Ricardo. Yes, I will marry you." Ricardo stood up, sliding the ring onto her finger, and they embraced, each heart beating in unison against the backdrop of the gentle murmur of the lake. The excitement was palpable in the small lakeside house, where Clara and Ricardo, joined by Isabella, discussed the details of their upcoming wedding. The living room table was covered with wedding magazines, fabric samples, and flower catalogs, each item a promise of the joyful event to come. "I've always dreamed of an outdoor wedding," said Clara, flipping through a magazine that showcased a wedding in a flower-filled garden. "Maybe right here, next to the lake. It would be so symbolic, considering everything we've been through." Ricardo smiled, taking her hand. "I love that idea. The lake has been a place of so many new beginnings. I can't imagine a more perfect setting." Isabella, always practical, added, "And the weather in September is ideal. Not too hot, not too cold. We'll need a tent, of course, for safety, but the natural backdrop will be spectacular." "Great, then let's set it for September," Ricardo said, noting it down in the planner. "And what about the flowers, Clara? Any preferences?" "I love lilies and white roses," Clara replied. "They are elegant and simple, just how I imagine the day." While the adults planned, Sofia and Tiago played in the garden. The friendship between the two had blossomed as much as the plants around them. Tiago had brought a fairy tale book, and they lay on the grass, reading stories to each other. "When Mom gets married, we'll live in that house we visited the other day," Sofia told Tiago, her eyes shining with excitement. "Yes, and it has that big backyard where we can play soccer." Tiago responded, equally excited. "And maybe we can build a treehouse." Sofia laughed, liking the idea. "That would be amazing. And we can have our own garden. I'll plant lots of flowers. Back at the planning table, Ricardo looked at Clara, his heart full of love and anticipation. And about the music, love? Any special preferences for the band or DJ? Clara thought for a moment before responding, I think a live band would be wonderful. Live music always brings so much energy and joy. Perfect. I'll look for some local bands that can play jazz and classical music, Ricardo suggested, jotting down another task on his growing list. With each detail discussed and every decision made, Clara and Ricardo's wedding began to take shape, molded by the hopes and dreams of everyone involved. The wedding day dawned with the lake mirroring the pure blue of the sky, and a gentle breeze swayed the ribbons and flowers decorating the large white tent set up in the garden. Everything was meticulously prepared for the celebration. Chairs perfectly aligned, each adorned with a small garland of lilies and white roses, and the path to the altar covered in flower petals. Clara, dressed in an elegant silk wedding gown with lace details, reflected the morning sunlight. Beside her, Ricardo, impeccable in a dark blue suit, held her hand, his eyes sparkling with emotion and love. Both walked slowly down the aisle formed by friends and family, who smiled and wiped discreet tears. You look beautiful, Ricardo whispered to Clara, squeezing her hand. And you look incredible, Clara replied with a radiant smile. I can't believe this day has finally come. Upon reaching the altar, the officiant began the ceremony with warm and welcoming words, talking about love, commitment, and the journey that Clara and Ricardo had taken to get there. When it came time for the vows, both expressed their feelings with words that touched all those present. I promise to love and care for you, to forever explore both the beautiful and the challenging in life together, declared Ricardo, his voice firm and full of conviction. Clara, moved, responded, I promise to be your partner in all adventures, supporting you on difficult days and celebrating on happy ones. After the exchange of rings and the long-awaited, you may kiss the bride, applause erupted, and the celebration transformed into a vibrant party with music, dancing, and laughter. As the guests enjoyed the party, Isabella and Mateus stepped aside, observing the scene with a sense of accomplishment. Do you realize, Mateus? Isabella began, her gaze sweeping over the joyful group. All of this started with a small decision to help someone in need. I never imagined that a simple act of kindness could result in something so wonderful. Mateus nodded, his arm around Isabella's shoulders. It's true. It shows the power of human connections, doesn't it? A small act of kindness not only changed Clara and Sophia's lives but ours too. It brought new people and experiences into our lives. Yes, and seeing them now, so happy, makes it all worthwhile, Isabella concluded, feeling a wave of gratitude for being able to witness such happiness. As the party continued, laughter and music filling the air, the newly formed family reflected on the unexpected course of events that had brought them there, celebrating not just a wedding but the beginning of a new life. It was a golden evening, and the lake mirrored the vibrant colors of the sunset as family and friends gathered to celebrate Sophia's birthday, now a young girl full of life and dreams. A gentle breeze carried laughter and lively conversations as everyone assembled in the spacious garden by the lake, which over the years had transformed into a sanctuary of memories and art. Clara, alongside Ricardo, watched Sophia playing with Tiago and other friends. They ran and laughed, their voices blending with the soft sounds of nature around them. Sophia's grandfather, seated comfortably in a chair under the shade of a large tree, smiled as he watched the scene, his face illuminated by the soft twilight light. Can you believe how far we've come, Ricardo? Clara asked, her voice laden with emotion and gratitude. Ricardo, who had become not only her husband but also a pillar of strength and love in her life, held her hand. Every day with you all is a reminder of the incredible transformations that love and compassion can inspire, he replied, gently squeezing her hand. Isabella and Matthias, now doting grandparents to another grandchild beside Sophia, joined them, sharing a toast in honor of Sophia and the many journeys they had all traveled together. "You know, Matthias," Isabella began, looking at the wooden statues that Sophia's grandfather had carved and that now adorned the garden, "each of these pieces tells a story of our lives, from the difficult moments to the joyful ones. It's as if they're here to remind us of where we came from and what we've overcome." Matthias nodded, looking with admiration at the sculptures. "They are more than just statues. They are milestones of our shared journey, a constant reminder that, even in the most challenging times, there is always a possibility for renewal and happiness." As the sun completely set, casting an orange glow over the lake, Sophia approached them, holding a drawing she had made of the family next to the statues. "Look, Mommy, I drew all of us, including Grandpa's statues." Clara hugged Sophia, moved. "It's perfect, darling. Let's hang it in the living room, so everyone can see." As night fell and stars began to dot the sky, the party continued with a sense of unity and celebration. Soft music played in the background, and everyone danced, laughed, and shared stories, each grateful for the connections and the love they had woven together. This moment of celebration not only marked Sophia's growth, but also the maturing of a family that had learned that, above all, it is through love and compassion that a life filled with meaning and beauty is built. And so, reflecting on the lessons learned and the joys shared, they continued to build their lives, always remembering the statues in the garden that symbolized their intertwined journey.
So, if you're not subscribed yet, click on the subscribe button below and join our community. Thank you for your support and see you in the next videos.